the #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.
Good morning, guys, and welcome to episode 197 of Costa Rica Real Estate and Investments with me, your host, Richard Bexon. We're getting close to the 200th episode here, guys. Just a couple more weeks and then we'll release it. I've actually already recorded it, so it should be very, very interesting. But today we're going to be talking with Dan Chaput. Dan's been on the podcast a few times. He's from Costa Private Loans. It's a private lender who matches basically lenders with borrowers here in Costa Rica. So it's going to be interesting to see what he's seeing on the demand front and what's happening in the market. I love his viewpoint, as it's always very, I would say, crude and raw and to the point. There is no BS from Dan. So it's going to be very, very interesting getting his input on kind of what he's seeing, especially, in the lending world there. Guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please pass it on. Give us 5 stars. I love to see just the feedback that you guys get, or just reach out to us if you're doing anything here in Costa Rica. info@investingcostarica.com. That's info@investingcostarica.com. If you want to book a 15-minute consultation, free consultation, you can. The link is down in the description down below, or just go to our website, investingcostarica.com. I think, what's going to be interesting over the next coming months here in Costa Rica is that, as the market is kind of somewhat in flux at the moment, I think anyone looking to invest here would be smart to get some good advice here. And again, as I said this morning, your project here in Costa Rica or your investment is only as good as the team that you have on it. So just make sure that you're making the right decisions here in Costa Rica. And as I say sometimes, don't swing for home runs. Maybe take a few ones and learn from that before you do take that big swing for the home run. But anyway, let's get straight into the podcast. Good morning, Dan. How are you doing?
Hey, Richard. How are you? Good morning.
Good. I appreciate you taking time to come on the podcast. And as I always like to say, give us a no BS kind of view of what's happening in the market here in Costa Rica.
Yeah, like we were speaking a little bit earlier, I think there's a lot more value in being honest and transparent than sort of rosy glasses. And it gives more credibility. And that's what I like about you as well.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's always bias whenever you talk to anyone. We always have bias. I think you just need to always understand that. And I say that, your project in Costa Rica is only as good as the team that you have on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Having the right people is always key.
Definitely. Well, give me a perspective of kind of what you're seeing happening. Markets basically, are doing pretty well at the moment. We've got some inflation issues up north. I know real estate is slowing down. Commercial real estate seems to be taking a spanking in North America, of course. But what are you specifically seeing happening here in Costa Rica? And especially when it comes to kind of like your private lending business?
Yeah. So private lending is not a bad barometer. I think when you look at the US, a lot of times when you're looking at real estate numbers, you're looking at housing starts, you're looking at mortgage applications, you're looking at, all these other things that are a precursor to selling homes or a precursor to real estate in general. So I like to use some of the lending numbers and the things that we have here. This year, 2024, our inquiries have dropped a solid 50%. From 2022 or 2023. The last couple of years, it was so strong that we had to turn off our advertising and almost hide to keep people from trying to find us.
Yep.
Much work. And now, we actually have to work for it. We need to start advertising a little bit more. We're doing some revamps to our website, costaprivatoloans.com. We are starting to reach out to different builders to see if they're having some challenges that we can help them finish. Maybe reach out to some realtors, businesses, some small hotels. Do they want to do some revamps to their properties? Do they need to add a pool? Do they need to do $100,000, $200,000 worth of improvements? We can do those for them very quickly, a lot of times better than a bank can do. So we're having to be a lot more proactive now than reactive.
Yeah, I definitely think the craziness of 2022, 2023 is over. We definitely are seeing a slowdown. Tourist numbers are still raging. Like the number of tourists coming to Costa Rica is still doing exceedingly well. And I don't think that that's going to stop. I think just this availability to cash that I think it was like 23% of all cash had been printed over like the last 3 or 4 years. Some of that is now, it's now being sucked back up or invested elsewhere. So I definitely think it's slowing down. Is it better than 2019, which is where I kind of see the watermark, if that makes sense, the real watermark? Like, is it better than 2019? Because I look at 2022 and 2023 and go, we were on steroids, man. Like, but going to the pre-steroid era, of 2019, how are we doing compared to that? And it's still better than 2019.
Yeah. You mean for tourism or really building or sales or
I think more for tourism for sure, because I think tourism really kind of drives a lot of the real estate as well. But I mean, I think we're not going to see that craziness of 2022, 2023. And I think we're going to see I think the markets were overheated here in Costa Rica. And I think we're starting to see a return to, more, I would say, favorable purchase prices in some areas.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's got to be some value there. And even though Costa Rica is different from the US, or it's different from Canada, where most of our tourists and new residents or new business owners or purchasers come from, it is a different market, but they're still going to compare it to back home, right? Yep. They're going to be saying, what can I get in different places in Florida? What can I get in, these other places for an equivalent price? And when you say, hey, I'm sort of out in the middle of nowhere paying the same that I would pay in, I don't know, Fort Myers, Florida, or, pick your location, that is going to make a difference to them, numerically and emotionally.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting 2024. I mean, look, we've got more products available, more houses coming online than ever. We do have a lot more tourists coming in as well, but we're also seeing a return to seasonality. I mean, April and May were not as good as they were the last couple of years, this year.
Right.
Still better than 2019, but not as good. And I say that from a hotel occupancy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you with seasonality. I was talking to some. Yeah, I was talking to, there's a couple different people that I check in with. There's different barometers, right? So sometimes you ask a realtor, sometimes you ask people in tourism business, whatever it is. Just yesterday, there's a boat captain who's a neighbor of mine, and I like to check with him because he runs a lot of tours out of Los Sueños.
Yep.
And I said, Luis, what's going on? How's it going? And he says, bro, it's a lot slower than it was last year. And I'm like, maybe not the canary in the coal mine, but one element to look at that things are slowing down in occupancy rates. And when we go to different locations, we were in Monteverde not long ago. There weren't that many people that we saw staying where we were staying, and it didn't seem to be a mad rush like the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think we're just seeing a return to seasonality. It's return to the seasonal pattern that we had pre-COVID. What do you think the rest of 2024 is going to look like for real estate in Costa Rica, Dan?
I really think it's going to be pretty slow. Macro reasons and micro reasons are pretty much behind that. So like I mentioned before, what can you get as an equivalent in the US or Canada? If you're looking for a warm tropical location and you want a 2-bedroom, 3-bath house, if it's a $500,000 house in Costa Rica that you need to pay cash for, or a $500,000 house, somewhere in a nice location in Florida, actually finance and get tax breaks and all these other things.
Yeah.
Which are people going to choose? What's going to be a better ROI, especially with higher interest rates? So I think it's, based on almost equivalent pricing for almost equivalent homes, not exactly the same. It should be slower. There's a lack of good, affordable options that are a good value. Or if you can get good, affordable options at a good value, people have these asking prices that are so unreasonably high that it scares people off. Maybe somebody's willing to sell a house for $500,000. But they have a $1.2 million price tag on it, so nobody even bothers to call. And those are a lot of things. So through 2024, and there's an awful lot on the market for sale.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I agree, dude. I think that we've got the hangover. We're in the hangover, if that makes sense. You know, we had a great 2022, 2023, kind of the party times, and I think 2024 is basically we're going to have to return to some form of normality. I mean, I still think there's opportunities out there, and opportunities are going to rise if you know what it is that you're doing. And I mean, I think that that's the difficult part of a lot of people come here wanting to invest, just don't have perspective. You know, and it's very difficult for them to get perspective as well.
Yeah, when you talk about perspective, something that I kind of came up with that I like to share with people, just because I'm conservative, like to stay on the safe side of things. You know, people come down and like, oh, you know, it's the next big thing. You know, we're just getting started, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I think it's a great country. I'm a citizen. You know, I have a good, positive, long-term perspective of Costa Rica as well. However, I like to use Austin, Texas as a barometer because it's not a grossly overpriced city like New York or Los Angeles or something like that, and everybody knows it. The Costa Rican economy, the entire country, the GDP is half the size of Austin, Texas, right? So take that town of Austin, cut it in half, and that's the size of our entire country. When you're looking at some of these opportunities, just keep in mind just how small it is, right? This is not a big place with a whole lot of access to different opportunities and capital. You need to be really sharp and really on point when you're looking for business opportunities.
I agree. For me, it always comes back to cash flow, which is, you know, I try and buy stuff that I know that's going to cash flow well, so that, you know, that's why sometimes I just don't like land banking. Like I buy land, but I want to put something on it that's going to cash flow straight away, just because, again, otherwise it just sits there and I have no idea whether it's going to appreciate or not. And it's stuck. And the ability to have it generate cash or to resell it is just so much more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And people they're putting silly prices on their land as well.
Correct.
And they're pricing it to where there's no deal left for the next person, right? So they're pricing it for the maximum possible, you know, crazy person might want to buy who just won the lottery, but they're not thinking about the average person who wants to convert that into cash flow, wants to do something with that for the next person if you really want that thing to sell.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're getting an idea of kind of what's happening, and I agree with you on what's going to happen in 2024. You know, I mean, I'm excited just because I think opportunities are going to arise, and there's opportunities that also have good cash flow. But I do think that a slowdown has already happened. You can just see it. I mean, the amount of just like the words fire sale being used, or cuts, those kind of things, which, you know, price reductions, those kind of things, or price improvement.
See them all the time.
Yeah, price improvement. Sorry. But let's change gears a little bit. I mean, how do private loans work in Costa Rica, and who are they for and who are they not for then?
But so private loans traditionally, we have completely changed the way that private loans traditionally worked here. They've been around a long time. This is nothing new. These are hard money loans in the US and Canada. But traditionally, private loans have been used as somebody with some cash taking advantage somebody else who's in a bad situation. I don't like to do business like that. I don't like the risk with my own money. So what we've done instead is we focus just on very high quality borrowers who need some cash quickly, who happen to be real estate rich and cash poor. And we want to loan to people who are only a good risk and are going to take that money and use it to make more money. So it's safe for the borrower, it's safe for the lender. At the end of the transaction, everybody's happy with it. So it's just one individual loaning to another using real estate as collateral. They're good if you can make more money with something. They're good for short-term loans. You know, you can pay it back in 3 years, maybe max 5 years, because it's important to remember private loans expensive. They cost more than bank loans. They definitely cost more than mortgages in the US or Canada. So you want to be very careful with it. You know, we try to keep everything around 12% if we can. What are they not good for? A lot of times they're not good for purchases. They can, because most people are looking for a longer term, 10, 15-year mortgage that they can pay off little by little. Most people can't pay off a big chunk of money in 3 to 5 years. For a longer term loan, a traditional mortgage, we almost always refer to La Fisi, Max Zuniga there, because there's a lot of different people who are offering a lot of different mortgage products. You see them advertised, you see them on Facebook. I've called a lot of these people. I don't really see a whole lot of value in what most of them are doing. A lot of them will take a bank product and then just mark it up and make it more expensive and more difficult. Sometimes they're rather confusing products, whatever it is. So we try to be the very best for private loans. We want to have the best rates. We want to have the best service. We manage it long term, not only for the borrower but for the lender. If somebody has some taxes due, if they have banking issues and weren't able to make the payment, we'll walk them through those processes. But it's a product that should be a last resort. Number one, you should check your loanability in US or Canada first. That's always going to be less expensive. You want to use a traditional bank if you can. If those aren't available, we're probably the best resource for you.
Yeah. I mean, I again, people always balk at like that. We're like, oh, 12%. And I'm like, guys, that's not like unnormal here in Costa Rica. Like you see that.
Yeah, banks are about 11, right? So
Exactly.
After they adjust, they'll start out with a teaser rate, like 7.5%, 8%. But what it normally is somewhere between 5.5% to 6%, plus the 30-day interbank rate, which averages out to right around 10.5% to 11%. So we're a little bit more than the banks, but we don't have a prepayment penalty after the first year, and you can pay it off quick, right? So I'll give you a good example. We had a gentleman buy a really nice house in Cocoa. It was $1.5 million house. He had $1 million. He needed to borrow $500,000. And then he was retiring and getting his retirement funds in the next couple of years, could pay it off right away. That's something where you can use it for a purchase. Something we've been doing a lot, Richard, is when builders or anybody building a home, they get towards the end and they just run out of money. This can be for a lot of different reasons. A lot of times it's the exchange rate reason. The cost of materials, a builder walks out on them, anything, somebody robbed all their stuff, whatever it is. And they're just missing 100,000, 200,000 in order to finish that build. We can do those very easily.
I mean, I think it's probably lower risks for you guys when in that final stages as well, just to kind of get it over the finish line.
Yeah. So a private lender is a very risk-averse person. We don't want to take risks because our upside is capped at generally like 12%. Our downside is pretty big. Even though we have the ability to, foreclose just like a bank would, we don't want to take to a legal situation. So we're looking as low risk as possible. So we will not do a build from the ground up. Unless it has windows, doors, roof, and electrical, we won't do it. We see some other companies and some of the other competitors, trying to get funding for something that's like just a concrete foundation and some metal sticking up. I would never fund anything like that. It's super dangerous for a lot of different reasons that you don't have control as to what's going on. And not only is it dangerous for the lender, it's dangerous for the borrower as well, because they're already getting indebted at a relatively risky stage. And it can go bad for everybody. We never want anything to go. We prefer to never do business than to be in a situation where it could go bad for anyone.
Well, I think that's a great ethos to have kind of within your business as well. I know that it's a very gray market, but I think that you guys make it very black and white, and are very honest with people as well. Which people always joke that Costa Rica is a sunny place for shady people, but I think you're one of the good guys. So hence why you're on the podcast.
Thank you. There's a lot of shadiness in Costa Rica. There's a lot of lack of transparency, and but because of that, there's a lot of opportunity as well.
Correct. Talking about that then, where do you think the opportunity is going to be in 2024? I mean, the market is, overheated. We're coming kind of off this drunken rampage of 2023. Where is the opportunity going to lie?
I think long term about the real estate market, a lot of these people who maybe have on short-term rentals on their. When we loan on a short-term rental, one of the things that we're really looking for is that going to be able to be converted into a long-term rental to where they can start getting some cash flow. There's a lot of demand for long-term rentals, especially in the hotspots, and a complete lack of inventory. And the short-term rentals are some of the things that have run up the prices like crazy. So I think long-term rentals and midterm rentals as well. We have some clients who will do 3 months at a time, both the landlord and the renter. You know, we see things on Facebook groups all the time, for example, where people are like, hey, I'm coming for 2 months, I'm coming for 3 months, where can I stay?
Yeah.
And so that's too expensive to do an Airbnb, and long-term rentals don't want to do that. For those people who are looking for it, but something else is the landlord or the owner of the property in this case. What they can do is they can have different prices for different seasons. So they can have a green season rate, keep that occupied during the green season, and then they can hike up the rate for high season as well for those people who want to come down and check it out. And midterm and long term are what a lot of people should be looking at if they own vacation rentals.
Yeah. What areas of Costa Rica do you think are going to be hit hardest in 2024?
There are, I don't know how much there's geographic areas, right? So I think some of the geographic areas that are really overheated and have just ridiculous prices. I see Nosara with people, you know, trying to sell at $7,000-8,000 a square meter when people know that you know it costs them $2,000 or $2,500 to build. Those are going to be hit hard. But I think there's a lot of, I don't know if it's the sellers or the realtors that are doing this phenomenon, but there's a lot of badly overpriced homes selling as if they're brand new homes. That's going to be hit hard. If something's not a brand new, well-built, you know, really nice house, you shouldn't have the pricing on there that's you know, thinking that somebody doesn't know the difference between a light construction house or a concrete block house or good materials versus bad materials. So I would say the people that are hit hardest are going to be the ones that are overpriced. You had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, I just forgot his name, down there in Uvita, who's a builder, and he said he's looking for 20-25% return on his builds.
Yep.
He's going to be great, right? The people are looking for 100% return, they're going to be hit.
Correct. I mean, I think that making easy money in Costa Rica is not easy. You know, you've been down here long enough, so have I, of like, if you know what it is that you're doing, yes, you can make money here, but you just really need to know the market and really understand it. And in coastal areas, it's all driven by tourism as well.
Right.
You know, so yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting year, and I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. I mean, what product do you think is still missing in Costa Rica, Dan?
In my world, there's a product that's missing, a very good reason why it's missing, and that is developer or building financing. Everybody's looking for it. It's probably the biggest inquiry that we get all the time. You know, I don't know, 10, 20 times a week, we get somebody that's like, hey, I've got a piece of land. I need a loan to build or develop it. We won't do it because it's too dangerous. There's so many things that happen. There's the water permissions. There's the light permissions. There's, you know, the cost of developing. There's people who are new and don't realize just how difficult that is. So it doesn't really exist, but there's also a very good reason why it doesn't exist, which is it's just too risky for the lenders.
Yeah. I mean, again, I have probably 1 or 2 conversations, you know, a week with people like, hey, I've got this land that I'm looking to develop, or I'm partway through this development, Rich, you know, and I'm like, look, I think I've only done 1 partnership beforehand just because I'm not going to jump into bed with someone I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's a long project developing here in Costa Rica. I mean, it's not, I mean, take a look at all the projects in Costa Rica. I mean, even small ones, there are ones out that have been around for 20, 30 years and still aren't finished and sold. So, but it's also what's going to make you different? Like, and again, it comes down to cash flow is, okay, people build homes, but like, how are you going to cash flow that and keep it moving? Because otherwise, like, look, Hacienda Pinilla pre-pandemic was a ghost town.
Yep.
You know, Like, it was a ghost town. Lots were $80,000. It was a ghost town. No one was ever there. Today, lots of $500,000. People are living there and moving around. But it took the pandemic for that to happen. So another pandemic, fingers crossed, is not going to happen anytime soon. So, like, are you willing to ride that whole thing for the next 20 and 30 years, depending on the size of your project, of course? But it's not I'm going to have this done in 5 years. Why? Because as you come back to is the financing is not readily available to people.
Yeah, exactly. So with those things, we tell people that, we won't do it. We don't know anybody that will do it. Banks won't do it.
Yep.
Unless it's a special situation in Central Valley. Their best option at that point is an equity partner.
Yep, exactly. Well, okay, this has been great, Dan. I'm sure people are loving this podcast of kind of getting an idea of what's happening in the market here. But my last question for you, which I still love to ask everyone. If you inherited $500,000 and you had to invest into a business or real estate in Costa Rica, what would you invest it in and why?
I love this question. So part of it goes to what we were speaking about earlier, which is how there's so many opportunities because of opaqueness, a lack of transparency, and people just having, ridiculous pricing. For those who are able to, sell something at a reasonable price and still make a buck, there's plenty of opportunity. But on a bigger scale, there's two ideas that I kind of have that I think are pretty interesting. And it also kind of boils down to a lot of people in Costa Rica are used to overpaying for things. Pharmacies are a big business here. Yes. And pharmacies overpay like crazy. I mean, the prices are nuts at pharmacies. If somebody were to be transparent and have a pharmacy that was a true discount pharmacy that showed what their cost was, Mark Cuban is doing this in the US at a very large scale. So you say, this is my price, this is my markup. They deliver it to you to make it cheap. This is what my competitors are charging. And you show exactly what your markup is. And you say, we are the very best option. And that, take that and you can apply it to any industry that you like. There's a lot of opportunity there to make money through all those companies that are, trying to make a quick buck or trying to overcharge. If you simply show honesty and transparency and everything, there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah. You said there were two though. That was one, right? Was there a second one?
The other one, a 24-hour mechanic shop. You and I are in the Central Valley, so we can probably relate to this. You drop off your car, it's ready 3 or 4 days later. There's a lot of unreliable mechanic shop. But if there's 24 hours, so say you drop it off in the morning, as long as they can get the parts that you need, they stay, you've got 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, and they're working, 24 hours to get that done. They have it for you ready the next day instead of 3 days later. That would be a hit.
Wow, I never even thought about that. My brother-in-law was a mechanic, and he was like thinking about moving to Guanacaste to open up his own mechanic shop up there. And I'm like, dude, you'll be full of work, but making it 24/7 could be very interesting.
It's a thought. I'm a car guy. I like cars, so I've had that one in the back of my mind for a while.
Awesome. Well, 2 great ideas. Dan, again, thanks very much for your team, and I think for your time, sorry. And anyone that wants to reach out to Dan and get in contact with him can. All of his contact details will be in the description down below. But appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast, sir.
Thanks very much, Richard. Have a great weekend.
You too, buddy.
Bye now.
Guys, apologies there for the internet connection. That was me. I was actually hiking Chiripo, and my daughter sent me a message saying that the internet in the house is not that great, and I made a change to it. So I'm going to have to go back and change it back anyway. So my daughters are my litmus test for anything when it comes to internet in the house. But great podcast there from Dan. Again, I think 2024 is, kind of everyone's waking up from the party of 2022 to 2023. I still think that there is a lot of opportunity out there. Again, if you know what it is that you're doing, it's going to be a little difficult to get a little bit of perspective for anyone that doesn't spend, their time in this world of investing and also property here in Costa Rica. So as I said, I mean, your project is only going to be as good as the team that you've got on it. And it's just going to be interesting. Again, there is going to be opportunity out there. So, keep your eyes on it. I always go back to cash flow. So you just need to make sure that you can actually cash flow your project here in Costa Rica. But if anyone wants to reach out to Dan, that you can do, and lending is a bit of a litmus test here of kind of what's happening here in Costa Rica. So anyway, Dan's details are in the description down below. Always appreciate his no BS kind of view on what's happening here. But Guys, if you enjoyed the podcast, please give us thumbs up, 5 stars. I love hearing from you guys. You can email us info@investingcostarica.com, info@investingcostarica.com. Also on the website, you can book a free consultation as well. We're a sucker for helping people, so we'll kind of point you in the right direction. If we add value, maybe we can work together. If not, we'll give you everything that you need in order to kind of to move on there, guys. But until the next podcast, very much appreciate your time. Bye.
The #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.